Gabe, Darren McFarland, Elijah Campbell, all at the Wholesale Link Studios, powered by RumbleOn.com. Hope you're having a great start to your Wednesday morning. Darren is making his way in because he's in studio, so it's like the first day of school. Everybody's excited to see him.
Or people don't believe he's actually here, which is kind of where I was.
Yeah, I know.
He came in, and I was like, so you bring somebody in off the street?
I found him just wandering down Murfreesboro Road.
Heard they might be Bojangles in the building today, and it wandered him out of the house.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. That's what'll get you sometimes. But anyway, got a great show planned for you. Usually, we'd be talking about Titans practice going on right now, but they're practicing later on this evening. So a night practice for the Titans, or a late afternoon night, as they get ready for their preseason game, the preseason opener on Friday in Atlanta. And, it's smart to practice this afternoon in the heat and the conditions to get ready for that, for the beautiful retractable roof stadium that they have in Atlanta. So you got to get used to those conditions.
Oh, yeah. We're definitely not accustomed to that here, a retractable roof and all that fancy stuff. So got to practice for it because you're not going to have it permanently.
Yeah. So I wish they did, because I would have seen Garth Brooks. I'm not bitter at all about that. But
yeah, they announced a date for when that's going to be rescheduled. Are they going to reschedule that? What's the deal with that?
It's a good question. That is a very good question. Hello, Darren. Welcome in.
Hello, Chase and Elijah.
I was just saying, it's kind of like the first day of school. You're running into people you haven't seen in a while.
Yeah. Reintroducing myself.
Because everybody has the same reaction, like, whoa, what's up?
Apparently so.
Good times. Good times.
I was here for Alio.
You were, yeah. I mean,
now we've got another special guest coming later today.
Yeah, it involves food. So
it's not for the listeners, but they don't get any gain out of it. But
that's okay.
Maybe we
do.
Maybe we will.
It'll give us that extra energy that we need, for the last hour.
I'm so disappointed in myself. I really am. Because I had a moment where I didn't remember to do something before the very, 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 did I say very, very hot baseball practice last night?
Yeah.
Because if you were out last night, it was
It was sticky.
Hot. You could cut it with a knife. And we didn't even bring it up yesterday. So I don't know what's going on with me. Maybe it's the heat. I don't know. I forgot to record Hard Knocks.
Well,
because I would have watched it last night.
So would I.
When I got home, but I totally forgot.
But HBO Max, you're good.
No, I know. I mean, I'll watch it, but I mean, I'm so disappointed that I didn't watch it last night. So did anybody watch it?
No, I'm glad you didn't.
Okay.
Because I wanted to. It's the Cowboys, obviously. So I'm very invested.
How about
in
them
this.
Cowboys?
How about them Cowboys? But I went out for a little bit, and then when I was driving home, I was like, oh yeah, Hard Knocks. So I can watch that, and then I just got home and fell asleep. Like it just didn't happen. So that's my after-school project today.
Yeah.
Is to watch Hard Knocks.
I'm definitely going to do it right after the show.
Yeah. So in
I hope
HBO
it's
Max,
worth
HBO Max makes it easy. You just open HBO Max and get good to go.
Yeah. I'm not worried about that, but I'm just disappointed that I didn't watch it last night. But, if you're a day late, big deal.
Right.
The question is it going to be good?
I would think so. I mean, it's the Cowboys. There's, at least from a football standpoint, there's a lot of intrigue. With Dak coming back off the injury, I would think Zeke would be interesting on a show like that. Jerry.
I know they don't fit the profile because I know what you have to be a non-playoff team.
Which I hate that rule. I wish
it's dumb. It's really dumb. Like, just pick the best storyline. Honestly, this is where I'm going with this. To me, the real intriguing one would be the Titans.
Mm-hmm. What I wish they would do.
I mean, I think they would get really good ratings with the Titans.
I think they would too.
There's a lot of intrigue.
Derrick Henry.
You've got
Mike Vrabel uncensored.
Oh,
come on.
Goodness.
Does Mike Vrabel change for the cameras?
No chance. I don't think he does.
No chance?
No chance.
On a scale of 1 to Rex Ryan, how bad does it get?
No, but in fact, I think what would make it so good is basically one of the storylines is Mike Vrabel basically hating the fact that his team's on Hard Knocks and complaining about it the whole time. Like that I think would be hilarious because I think he would absolutely hate it. But I think what the league should do is change the rule. I didn't mind doing two teams last year. And so do one team out of the AFC, one team out of the NFC every year.
Well, but you're asking, think about the production that goes into that. And you're asking them, what are they going to do, Buffalo and Seattle?
No, don't do that.
Well, but they did L.A. and L.A.
I know.
They may bristle at that. I like that idea. But
you don't think HBO could swing that?
That's a lot of work, man.
I think they could swing that. But you have one. You have the on-the-ground crew.
Do they have the manpower to do that?
I think so. You have the on-the-ground crew, and then everything's edited back in L.A. I think is probably where it's all put together. So
I think, look, will I watch? Yes. They've missed the boat because, okay, so if you're going to go under the current guidelines, and they need to scrap the guidelines, what they need to do is just figure out who's going to be the best story, who's the best one to do. Who cares if they're a playoff team? Who cares if they won the Super Bowl? You just pick the best storyline, the one that you think is going to get you the most attention and the most viewers. But if you're going under the guidelines of you weren't in the playoffs last year, why not the Jags?
Yeah, with Urban.
With Urban, Trevor Lawrence,
Tim Tebow.
Tim Tebow. The Jags. So when did we ever think we would say that?
Yeah.
The Jags is actually probably the correct answer.
They definitely more intriguing than the Cowboys.
I think so.
If you had so
what's the big storyline with the Cowboys? Dak coming back. Who cares?
That's it.
Okay, he's great. He's back. Okay.
I think for me, like if you had to do a ranking, you take the guidelines and put them aside. But if you had to rank the most intriguing storylines this year for a Hard Knocks type show, Titans are up there. Jags you may rank the Jags above the Titans just for the Urban and some sizzle there.
I think honestly the AFC South would have had real intrigue. I know that sounds silly, but think about this: they have to make the decision well before camps begin. Right, the decision is made months out. The Colts would be intriguing, right, with Carson Wentz. I get it. Now he's no longer in the mix. But the Colts would have been a good one. I get it. They're a playoff team. I'm talking about just if you were just handpicking your team. I think for the purposes of this, the AFC South actually has intrigue because of, oh, by the way, even Deshaun Watson is at camp. Now, I don't know how much Houston would want that. I don't know how much the league would want them focusing on Deshaun. I don't know, considering all the circumstances. But he is at training camp.
Yeah, 4th team reps is what he was taking. But, yeah. No, I hear you. Like, I think.
Like Titans, Jags, and Colts. But, I get it. Now the injuries have happened, so it would have been a little bit of a dud. But to know that the Carson Wentz and everything else that goes in with the Colts, and I think that would have been intriguing. It wouldn't have been now. But you still have Eason and Ellinger taking snaps. I don't know. We don't know anything. Is it really going to
be one of them?
Yeah. Yes. The answer is yes. Unless they go, you were the lucky customer and the cable provider actually showed up at 8 a.m. Raise your hand if that's ever happened to you, or if you're the one that always ends up at 4:30 and they finally get to your house. Or they call you and say, we're running late and we'll be there at 5:45.
Well, apparently,
waited all day.
Lightning might strike twice because apparently Nelson and Wentz had successful surgeries. And I saw one report today saying the Colts are optimistic they could be back by week 1. For whatever that means. But
do they ever report unsuccessful surgeries? Like when Alex Smith had his surgery,
never seen that.
Did they come back and say this was going to be probably maybe an unsuccessful surgery?
See, it's only when there's silence. And there's radio silence on the team's end after the surgery is when you should be concerned.
Yeah, I'm just curious. It's successful surgery. Well, okay. When is there not? When do you report that? I have yet to get the press release of Well, Quentin Nelson had his unsuccessful surgery, or Carson Wentz had the unsuccessful surgery, and now we're anticipating probably a long haul back and 3 more surgeries. I've missed that press release.
Haven't seen that one yet.
I haven't seen that one.
Usually
yet.
you try to come up with other stories on your Twitter feed or something like that to make people forget that the player had surgery to begin with, and that way no one's asking any questions they don't want to know the answers to.
Yeah.
By the way, because you weren't here last week, and I brought up when we were Willie and I were going through the names of, okay, who should the Colts look at? Should they try and trade for Foles and, have that reuniting, which would be interesting. But I threw out, why not call Alex Smith? Like, I know he retired, but I think he retired because he couldn't find the right fit. If you're Alex Smith, wouldn't the Colts be intriguing to you?
Well, to me, maybe it says 2 things. One, they are intrigued to see what they have at these young quarterbacks. So maybe there is intrigue.
Which isn't completely wrong. I mean,
but they are a team that people are predicting to be in the playoffs, and you can't get off to a 1-5 start and expect to get in the playoffs. So waiting for your quarterback that you traded for to get in the mix. And 2, maybe they feel like it's not going to be. Because the only way he's out of the season for a long – remember, if it's the short term, then he's not going to miss much.
Right.
If it's the short window, once again, we talked about this yesterday. This is the first 5 to 12 week diagnosis I've seen, I think, in the NFL ever.
Yep.
And the Colts did it twice. But if it's more on the 12 weeks, we know then Wentz is going to be gone for a good amount of time, and he's going to miss a chunk of the season, close to half of the season. So to that, if they thought it was going to be the 12-week window, then what you said makes a ton of sense. Like, really? You're going to roll the first half of the season with one of those 2?
Yeah. So, but here's another reason why I brought him up, or anybody else, is who's to say that Carson Wentz stays healthy? I mean, he's shown that he can't. He's shown that he's injury prone. So even if he comes through this, who's to say that he's ready for week 1 and then week 4 he hurts something else? So, I mean, but this may give them a good opportunity to see that, well, if that happens, then we're comfortable with Easton or Ellinger.
Yeah.
Or Brett Hundley, who's also on the roster. Hey, Deshaun Kaiser's out there. Give him a call.
I think they will turn to Alex Smith well before they ever get to those other 2. Don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I would think so. I would hope so.
No, you wouldn't.
Well,
you actually want them to turn.
Yeah, it's a good point.
You're rooting against the Colts.
There you go. Yeah. Good point. So
don't want them to have best option.
Do what you need to do. Whatever. Peyton Manning is not walking through that door, and neither is Andrew Luck.
Is Phillip Rivers?
I think he's a coach in high school.
Yeah, I think he's done. I don't know where that. I don't think he's not going to start. He's coaching high school football. That was the plan all along. And he's not going to just leave. He's just not going to leave. You
know those colorful noodle things that you take in the pool that kids play with? That was Phillip Rivers' arm. That's what was left of it.
Or those big inflatable things outside car dealerships.
Yeah, he had nothing
that shake
left.
In the wind.
Right. There's nothing left. No meat on that bone.
Well, it's enough meat to get him in the playoffs.
Yeah, but not win.
Well, they played Buffalo pretty tight.
That's what I'm saying. Like, if he's Phillip Rivers even of like 3 years ago, do they win that game?
Possibly.
I think they probably do.
Yeah.
They win the division if they get Phillip Rivers of 3 weeks ago or 3 years ago?
Probably.
A good chance.
Yep. All right, we'll come back. Jim Wyatt. We'll talk about Titans training camp. They're going to have a little bit later practice today, more late afternoon. And then tomorrow they'll be traveling to Atlanta, and they'll get ready for their first preseason game against the Falcons. The Dirty Birds on Friday. We'll talk to Jim on the other side as you listen to Darren, Daunic, and Chase, ESPN 102.5 The Game. A little bit later, practice today for the Titans before they get suited up for their first preseason game Friday night against the Falcons. Back here on Darren, Daunic, and Chase here on this Wednesday. Darren McFarland and Chase McCabe alongside Elijah Campbell, man on the board here at our Wholesale Link Game Studios, powered by RumbleOn.com. Now joined by Jim White, who covers the team. He's been doing so since 1972 when they were in Houston. Something like that. When they had tearaway jerseys. I think that's when Jim first started off in the business. In all seriousness, I was thinking about this because we had Brandon Stokely on yesterday to talk about a little bit on the Broncos, but really about, he had 2 stints with Peyton Manning. Peyton was inducted, and I asked him towards the end about coming to, Adelphia Coliseum back in the day when he played for the Ravens and what that was like. He was on that 2000 Ravens Super Bowl team. And, he just talked about how tough it was and how loud it was and how crazy the fans were. And I ask you this because you've seen all the layers through the years. You've been there from the beginning. You've gone through the lulls too, and now it's swung back around. It feels like there's real anticipation. It feels like this fan base is jacked more than I've seen them in a long time. So I anticipate that the crowds and the atmosphere is going to be really good this season because of the intrigue. They should be a good football team. They've got a lot of names that fans can identify with and root for. Do you get the same vibe?
I do, yeah, and I think it's kind of been building. I think it was some lean years until this recent run of success. And, you win a playoff game in Kansas City, and then, that excited the fan base, so a couple of years ago to go to New England and lose then. But then I think the AFC Championship run, year before last, you saw it get ramped up even more. People were getting excited about this team, feeling like it was headed in the right direction and so close to getting the Super Bowl. And even last year, winning the division, people realize, this is a good team. I mean, and it is a team capable of winning the whole thing. And obviously didn't want to go out in the first round of playoffs, but I think every step has kind of led up to what is going on now. And now you got a team that's really good across the board on offense. And you bring in a 7-time Pro Bowler like Julio Jones. It kind of just puts a nice cherry on the top there. You've made a lot of improvements on defense. So I think it's a roster and a team and a franchise that's in a great position to win, and people are excited about that. But you gotta take advantage of this window here. We talked about the good old days, I guess. Covering the team in '99. I've been around for a long time. That was the window there from '99 to 2003, where fans were excited and the team was good and went to the playoffs 4 times in 5 years, 2 AFC Championship games, a Super Bowl, but that team never won. And so now we're in another one of these windows. But yes, fans are excited. Team is good, but you got to take advantage of this. And we're on the verge of just kind of seeing what this 2021 team is all about.
And I think the other factor I probably should throw in there is I just think that fans are excited to get back. The fans are excited to get back and see things in person. I mean, we just saw a Music City Grand Prix come through, and right there at Nissan Stadium, I mean, they had the doors wide open. We walked in there, walked around a little bit. Over 100,000 people there. The Predators opened things up there at the very end in the playoffs, and they were basically packing the house again. It's pretty clear that, people want to get back to seeing things live, and so that could also factor in as well, that just the dying to get back in there and see it live and in person.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this time last year when they were gearing up for a season that you couldn't really guarantee was going to happen. And then when it finally did happen, I'll never forget going to Denver, being there for the Monday night game, which usually just is a raucous atmosphere.
Right,
there.
nobody.
And there was nobody there. And there was nobody walking the streets of Denver, and it was like that, on a lot of trips where there were no fans in the stands. We were fortunate enough to have fans here. But even then, it wasn't the same. I mean, it was limited capacity. and fans were excited to be there, but it just was different. And now, as things do edge back closer to normal, there is going to be a lot of excitement. I expect, rowdy crowds. I hope that things will calm down from a virus standpoint where you're not having to scale back again. I mean, I hope trends will get better where we won't have any interruptions and things that tamp down the enthusiasm, but that kind of remains to be seen. But what we know now is Titans have a good football team. Titans fans are excited to go. We've got a preseason opener kicking off here in just 2 days, which is kind of the start of the whole thing. And I know I'm excited. I think everybody else is to get this thing started.
Jim, I've said if it were me, I just look, maybe it's because I've been trained over the years from what I've seen and what's worked here. Maybe that skews my decision-making or my decision process. I like kind of the older guy that's been a starter who's now kind of delegated to be in the backup. It's worked here well. And Neil O'Donnell and Kerry Collins. I mean, we know the list. Matt Hasselback, and really Ryan Tannehill was kind of that when he came here, and he's changed that whole narrative. But that's what I've always liked as the backup. But it's very clear, and I'm saying I'm not questioning Logan Woodside. I don't know what Logan Woodside is. I have no clue. Clearly they do, and they're around him. So I know that there's something about him they really like. What is it you think they really like about Logan Woodside that he continues to be kind of the backup quarterback? And then maybe touch on, do you think Matt Barkley has a legitimate shot, or is he just a camp number and basically a camp body?
Well, I think all three are going to be around in some fashion this season, and just because of security and because of existing COVID, possibilities, and so I think you got to keep yourself protected, and so I do think no matter what order they come in, it's going to be Tannehill, Woodside, and Barkley here, and I will say that Barkley has already, just in a handful of days of practice, looked like an upgrade over Deshaun Kaiser. I mean, he's been decisive, more decisive throwing the football in practices. He's been more accurate. He's got a better, thrown the ball downfield and made some good plays. I actually think he's done a pretty decent job. Certainly in Buffalo, his touchdown interception numbers aren't great, but I thought he was pretty solid in Buffalo. So I think he's not a bad option, but with all that said, I mean, like you said, Darren, I mean, the coaching staff, believes in Logan Woodside, and if that wasn't the case, they wouldn't have gone into last season with him as the backup quarterback. The hope is that Ryan Tannehill stays healthy and is your starter all 17 games. But based on what Woodside has done in practices where he has been decisive, has been accurate, he hasn't turned the ball over, and he's made good decisions. He doesn't force the ball even in practices, and they believe in him. Still, you can't say for sure what he would do in games just because he hadn't played. I mean, he's only completed one pass, in his NFL career, and had a lot of opportunities. So you just don't know exactly what you're going to get, like with some of those other veteran quarterbacks that you mentioned. But I keep going back to, the people a lot smarter than I am, that are in charge of the football team. And I feel like if they believe that Logan Woodside can do it, and they have faith that he can do it, then you've got to trust in what they see. We'll see how things play out as far as the competitive situation. I still would be surprised if Logan Woodside's not the backup and Barkley's not the three. Either probably on the practice squad, but that's what training camp and that's what preseason games are all about, the competition. And we're going to see some of these preseason games when these guys have get a chance to play here over the next 3 weeks that we didn't have last year to use as an evaluation tool.
Speaking with Jim Wyatt, TennesseeTitans.com, I think currently on the depth chart that's been put out there are 12 wide receivers. We had this discussion the other day. Is it 6 or is it 7? I feel pretty comfortable it's not going to be 5. In your opinion, you've played this game many, many times over the years when you were on the beat, trying to predict the final roster. Are they going to carry 6 or 7 receivers in your opinion?
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, because I've seen everywhere from 4 to 7, I think, and 4's cutting it close, and that's maybe in some years where you've had 4 or 5 tight ends too. So, and you had some guys on standby that could come in if you had an injury. This is as talented and as deep a receiving core as I've seen since I've covered the team, and you can get to 5 or 6 really quick. I mean, Julio Jones, A.J. Brown, Josh Reynolds going to be on this team. I have to say right now, Marcus Johnson's going to be on this team unless he gets hurt. I mean, he's been one of the best receivers in the camp, so that's 4. You got to have a returner. I think it's either Rodgers or Batson there or 2, but that gets you to 5. I think Nick Westbrook-Ikhine on this team. That's 6.
Whoa!
Then,
you got 2 rookies. 2 rookies.
Yeah. Yes, and then what do you do? I mean, the reality is Grayson McMahon has outperformed Des Fitzpatrick in training camp. I mean, certainly from an expectation standpoint, I think when I started, when OTA started and when I did training camp previews even, I counted Fitzpatrick, in the top 5 as locks. And right now when I watch practices, he's not in the top 5 or 6. And he's right on the edge. Now, does being a 4th-round pick buy yourself a little bit more time and get you a little bit more patience from the decision makers? Yeah, probably so. But right now, I mean, and that just shows you how deep it is. I'm counting off the guys. I have
that's 8.
Patrick. Yeah.
If you count Patrick in, that's 8 you just named.
Yeah. So we'll see, and maybe he steps it up here in these preseason games. But there are a lot of other guys that are doing things that get noticed on a regular basis, and they've all kind of worked ahead of him in the pecking order, and now he's got to do some catching up to be, kind of included in that mix.
Talking to Jim Wyatt, and along those lines, I mean, I as I go through kind of in my head of trying to fill out this roster, I almost feel like you're going to go one less at tight end, like 3 tight ends to add the extra receiver, probably Ferkser, Swaim, Stocker at tight end, and then maybe an extra receiver. Is that kind of what you're seeing right now?
Yeah, but they really like Tommy Hudson. I'll say that. I mean, that's whether or not he does enough to bump somebody, or whether or not they feel like they can't afford to let him hit the mark. I mean, that's the thing about these preseason games, and you got to be tricky. If you play a guy and he plays well, then you try to cut him and bring him back in the practice squad, and you potentially could lose him. I mean, I've seen that happen a number of times over the years, including famously LeGarrette Blount. So, so we'll see how the Titans kind of handle things in the preseason. I think 3 is probably a safe number when you start looking at tight ends. But but maybe you keep an extra receiver, maybe you keep a 4th tight end, and then you go thin somewhere else. And that's kind of the numbers game you play every year when you try to play this roster count, because it's a lot of it's based on how much guys can help you on special teams. A lot of it's based on, hey, can I cut this guy and bring him back? It's going to be tricky, and unfortunately, sometimes health ends up making decisions for you. I mean, God forbid someone get hurt here in the preseason. I mean, that you don't want that to help make decisions for you too, and that's when you really got to start weighing, hey, how much is it worth playing some of these guys to risk injury at this point?
Jim, what about running back? We obviously know who the starter is. Darrington Evans seems to be making strides as the number 2. but McNichols has stuck around for a few years, whether it's practice squad or on the roster. He's somebody they seem to like. They brought in Brian Hill, and then they've last few years carried the fullback with Kari Blasingame. So again, it's a numbers game, but what have you seen out of the running back position behind Derrick Henry?
I mean, and we've hardly seen much any of Derrick Henry either. I've seen a ton of those guys. I mean, Evans is playing a lot. I think he's benefiting from the reps. He's getting better. No question that's going to help him. So, Henry Evans makes 2. I think heading into camp, I had Brian Hill at 3. Have McNichols, who obviously started on PUP. I think McNichols has kind of made up some ground. Hill is valuable because he can help you on special teams. He can catch the ball out of the backfield a little bit. I think that's the competition is between McNichols and Hill for that third spot. Blasingame is going to be on the roster. So, I see 4. Right now I see Henry, I see Evans, I see McNichols or Hill, and then I see Blasingame, and then I see him keeping another running back on a practice squad. And I'll say this, Becky Sargent, who a lot of people probably have not heard of, I guarantee you people will be he's going to probably get a little bit of chatter in the preseason because he's kind of a little bit of a spark plug guy who's running the ball well. He's going to be really busy late in these preseason games, and we'll probably get some people talking too. Kind of an unheard of guy.
Jim, defensively up front, I think a lot of people are excited about the Daunic Autry signing, excited to see what Jeffrey Simmons is going to do in year 3. Then obviously, and you're adding Bud Dupree on the other side of Harold Landry with Jayon Brown, Rashaan Evans returning in the middle. But somebody that I'm curious about, and he's almost in this position by default, but I also know that what I've read is he's had a pretty good camp, is Tier Tart, who's currently listed at the nose tackle position. What have you seen out of Tart working with those other guys that I just named?
Well, he's thinned down. He's gotten stronger looking. He doesn't look like he's just overwhelmed like he did last year. I remember watching him last year in training camp, and he would get corrected a lot, yelled at a lot. Sometimes that's good. Sometimes that's a sign a guy's just kind of lost, and I think he was lost, last year after not having any OTAs and stuff. But I also think when you're getting yelled at and getting coached up a lot, then that means that, and they're spending that much time on you, that means they think you've got some potential and they're trying to develop you. And I think that's what they were doing with him. I think they always knew he was someone that was capable of developing and being a good player, and he looks completely different, this year. When I watch, and again, a lot of these practices, they're in pads, but there's not tackling, and there's, you're not able to see things like you're going to see when it's all full go. But he regularly gets my attention. He has a good move to get into the backfield. He's made a lot of plays, on running backs, in the hole. He's going to be your starter at nose, and I think he's going to be pretty solid. Now, he's going to do a lot of dirty work. He's probably not going to hear his name maybe a whole bunch, but I think he's definitely going to be a factor on this team and allow some other guys to be better.
Whenever we have the pass rush conversation with the Titans, it's been, okay, you got to find that workhorse pass rusher. They signed Bud Dupree. That's the hope there. But I've also felt like they needed to address depth, behind those number ones. I look now, you got Derek Roberson. They drafted Rashard Weaver, Wyatt Ray, who's been around. They signed John Simon. Ola Adaney is more of a special teams guy, but, he's listed on the depth chart too. Do you feel better about the depth behind guys like Dupree and Landry?
Yeah, I do. They need to keep Landry from playing so many snaps. That's the problem with him over the last couple of years. He's played, playing 90% of snaps. I think he's just gotten worn down. And part of the reason he's playing so many snaps is because they didn't really have anybody behind him that they could trust and they could get the same production out of. But, as far as as long as Bud, is healthy and ready to go, and Landry, unfortunately, has missed a lot of time in camp lately because he's been dealing with something himself. I mean, as long as those guys want to play, that's a good 1-2 punch. You're going to get a lot of production out of those guys. But I think Roberson has definitely had his best camp. I think he's going to help more than he has. It's early, but I'd like to look at John Simon in some of these practices.
Yeah.
He's got my attention. He's made some plays. And I think that's a pretty good four-pack. Rashad Weaver is still developing. He looks the part. But, I'm anxious to see him in pads. I expect Wyatt Ray to compete. Another guy you mentioned Denny. He has been more of a special teams guy, and I think that's where his impact will be felt the most. But as long as those guys stay healthy, I think the group has been upgraded. And I think the group's going to benefit from, better players around them. I mean, and that's having an Autry up front. That's having guys in the secondary, especially on the outside who can match up more and be one-on-one guys. And I think the whole formula and the whole package will benefit those outside linebackers. And I do think they've got enough to be pretty good.
Jim, in your opinion, is the starting kicker on this roster?
I think preseason is going to tell a lot. I personally think they want one of these guys to win the job. That's why they've tried to develop Tucker McCann. And then they bring Ficken in here, and he's actually been pretty good in camp. I think in a perfect world, one of those two wins your job. He's your kicker for years to come instead of kind of a stopgap deal again, and he's relatively cheap. And but what happens here in some of these games is going to tell the story. Again, they both have been the last week. They've both been really good. They've made most of their kicks. They've been down the middle. They've made kicks from over 50 yards. They've looked confident doing it. But then there have been some times and some days in camp where guys have been erratic and push kicks to the right, and you've questioned whether or not one of them can get it done. So I think I'll be able to answer that question better after seeing a couple preseason games and seeing these guys kick when it matters. Like McCann is obviously the guy that they want to win the job, but he hasn't kicked in a preseason. He hasn't kicked in an NFL game. Because there wasn't a preseason game last year. So if he kicks well in the preseason, I think he could be the kicker on opening day. But if he is erratic and doesn't give the team much reason to feel confident, then I think they'll have to go out and get somebody at Ficken that isn't really good.
Are we going to not see the stars on Friday night? Is it going to be more of the backup guys? Yeah,
I would think so. I know Vrabel will never kind of give that away, but it just doesn't. For one thing, a lot of guys haven't been practicing a lot. A lot of guys are kind of nursing injuries, and I don't think you want to risk anything early in camp. So you're going to see a whole bunch of backups playing. I think you're going to see. It's going to be interesting. I'm curious myself to see how they approach the final preseason game because, again, you've only got 3 games this year.
Jim, you're playing linebacker. I don't know if you know this, but
Well, that last preseason is tricky because the last preseason game there's a 2-week gap now between then and your season opener. So sometimes the school thought is you want to get some guys some action just so there's not just such a long layoff. But is it worth risking injury to do it? And that's why guys get paid the big bucks to make those calls. But I'm not expecting to see starters much in this game on Friday, if at all, and really don't expect to see him much during the preseason. And that's just based on how things have been around the NFL lately.
Yeah. Good stuff as always, Jim. Really appreciate the visit. Keep up the good work, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Y'all have a good week. Thank you.
All right. You do the same. Jim Wyatt, TennesseeTitans.com is where you can find his work. Really good stuff there. We'll come back and discuss to wrap up the first hour of Darren, Daunic, and Chase. That's next. Bojangles is launching their first ever food truck right here in Nashville. The big kickoff is this. That's all, folks. This Saturday at Centennial Park. Food truck. I got so excited I couldn't even talk. The food truck will be serving Bo's brand new hand-breaded chicken sandwich to the first 200 people, as they say. It's so clucking good. Oh, boy. Got to be careful when you say that one.
Yes, you do.
They also have great giveaways and activities for the whole family to enjoy. That's this Saturday again, August 14th, starting at 12:30 p.m. until supplies last. They'll be right behind the Parthenon. And don't forget to follow Bo Food Truck NVL on Instagram for more details. It's Bo time. Food trucks it's a good idea. Whoever came up with that, good idea.
You remember when
Good call.
I remember when that first started and people were like, food truck, what's a food truck?
Yeah.
And now they're everywhere.
Yeah, now it's just kind of a staple, right? Now they come to neighborhoods. They come to ours.
Do they really?
Yeah. Yeah, like we schedule, like as a neighborhood, we schedule a food truck. Like they'll put out on our Facebook page, Tuesday, fill in the blank food truck will be here at 5:30. It's like, cool. All right.
Going to breweries and having food trucks there is the most clutch thing on the planet, too, because you're not expecting it, and it always slaps every time.
That's a big thing that happens now. Like you go to a brewery that they don't have their own kitchen, but they bring in food trucks. So that's what's cool.
Yep. Let's throw out a big hearty congrats. Yesterday we had Chris Mercado and Randy Huth on. They are the coaches for the Nolensville Little League team, and wow, they got it done. A little rain delay. I was disappointed because I was ready at 4 o'clock. I was ready to watch before I had to leave, and they had to push it back like almost 2 hours because of the rain delay. But they finally get things going against Georgia, and they get it done with a 4-2 victory. They punch their ticket into the Little League World Series. They're headed to Williamsport today. They do play Florida, though, who is undefeated in that region at 1 o'clock on ESPN. So we'll be able to watch that, but it is just for seeding purposes. Florida and Tennessee, this Nolensville team, have both punched their ticket into the Little League World Series. So congrats to them. They are District 7 champions, and they can be region champs if they beat Florida today. So really cool story. They get revenge on Georgia. It was a heartbreak loss. We talked about it with Chris and Randy yesterday. They were up 5-0 going into the final inning. Last at bat for Georgia, and they played 6 to win it. So a heartbreak loss, but obviously these kids are resilient, and they picked their heads up, and they got after it after that tough loss and went on to win a couple more games and then beat Georgia again. So congrats to them, another representative from this area in the Little League World Series.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so cool that we've, I think back to one of the first events you and I ever did together about 10 years ago when this station launched. We went out to, I think it was Goodlettsville.
It was.
Because they had made their run to the Little League World Series. And so that was like one of the first big things that we talked about as a station.
They were having a parade that day.
Yeah. Yeah. So to see yet another team be represented there, I mean, that's cool. It just shows you, and you're learning it firsthand now with your son playing and coaching, that there's a lot of talent in these parts.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's to make as a parent and a player and all of that, but to get to that level, but to see these kids and then think about kids that played in the Little League World Series that are now in the majors. I mean, there's quite a few that make that step. Did you know that Austin Dillon, the race car driver, was in the Little League World Series?
No.
Yep. He played when he was that age.
For North Carolina?
Yeah. Yep. So you never know who you'll find. But congratulations. That's awesome.
So we'll be watching today at 1 o'clock, like I said, for seeding purposes and to say they're region champs. I mean, that's cool. I mean, it's not like they're going into this not to win, but they're already in. So that's really cool. Fought their way out of the losers bracket and to beat Georgia yesterday. So congratulations to Nolensville Little League. Really, really cool story. We will continue to track their journey, and hopefully it'll be a special one. Hopefully this is not the last of feel-good stories for this Nolensville team.
Would this be something that when you get to that age level that your tidal wave you could possibly be a part of, or is that
it's a little league?
Okay, so you would have to.
It's a different setup.
Gotcha. I'm learning.
Yeah.
I'm learning through you.
Yeah, no, no,
this
it's
stuff.
it's just a different deal.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Take different steps, different path.
Right.
Incredible uniforms last night, too. I do want to shout them out there, the Vandy-looking pinstripe uniforms.
Yeah.
Definitely dressed to win that game last night.
Speaking of uniforms and speaking of Vandy, I love Vandy's new football uniforms.
Yeah, they did don some kind of going back. I mean,
That's
old school stuff.
They're Clark Lee.
Yeah, it's Clark Lee.
But the thing I like the most is instead of the star on V on the helmet, it's just the V. I think that looks cool, and I hope. I don't know if there's this year. I hope there's a black alternate helmet with a gold V. I think that would look really cool if they did that. But I like them. They're clean. Not that I hated the old ones. I wasn't a huge fan of the anchor chain thing. But I like these just because I think they're really slick and clean.
So what stood out to me in the Jim Wyatt conversation is something we've talked about a bunch, and I asked him about the receivers, and he named 8.
Yeah.
Think they carry 8?
No.
I don't either.
No.
But that means they've got some tough decisions to make.
They do, and you're going to have
– and that's why I brought up the Des Patrick. I wasn't trying to,
Fitzpatrick?
What did I say? Des Patrick?
Yeah.
Yeah, Fitzpatrick, yeah.
Des Fitzpatrick, yeah.
Where did Des Patrick come from?
Just shortening the name up.
Yeah. I mean, his name is
Save
Des.
you a couple letters, man.
His name is Des. You just forgot the Fitz part.
Yeah. So
Fitz Des Patrick.
he's clear. And the reason I brought that up on Monday is because it seems like he is last right now in the pecking order.
Yeah.
And what he has going for him is he was a 4th-round pick, and they traded up to get him in the 4th round. But it seems like he's last in the pecking order right now.
He's going to be one of those that they IR to, there's going to be something, and they'll put him on IR to get the spot. I don't think he's going to be on the opening roster, but they can't cut him. I mean, they traded up to get him. He's a 4th-round pick. They're not going to be able to sneak him through to the practice squad. And so I see that as one of those IR tricks, one of those loopholes that they do that, and then somebody else gets that spot. Because otherwise he's just taking a spot. He's taking from Chester Rogers or Marcus Johnson. And those two guys consistently, or Racey McMath, those guys have consistently been doing well.
Or Westbrook Akine. I mean,
and that's an interesting one.
That I know. And Jim seemed to
and he's not the
think
first
he's
person
pretty-
I've heard say that.
I mean, I don't want to say he pretty much counted him in, I would say.
Yeah, so Rogers and Johnson, everyone pretty much consistently has said they make it.
It does feel like it, and that's pretty interesting to know that those two, pretty much everybody's saying they're in.
They're in.
Unless they get hurt.
And then Westbrook Akine and Cam Batson, a lot of people are kind of back and forth on of them making it. And McMath, McMath early on in camp, everybody was thinking, all right, he's in. But then, maybe he's fallen off a little bit. The preseason is going to tell us a lot. I'm going to do my first 53 for Monday's show.
Okay.
So I'll have my first look.
I'll be curious to see who you've got in this wide receiving core.
Yeah, that's going to be hard. That's why Friday's going to matter.
And the running backs, too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There's some tough decisions to be made, but that's
DBs.
Yeah. But that's, look, like I said yesterday, that's what John Robinson said he wanted to create. And, look, if you have tough decisions to make, then what you said you were creating is working. You've got real battles going on. You got real camp battles.
Yep.
Real. Not just people making up camp battles. Like, you've got real camp battles, and it may come down to a final couple of practices. It may come down to a final preseason game. I don't know sometimes how that works, but it may come down to a last look, whether somebody is in or somebody's out.
Yep. So that's why these games matter.
We will come back. We talked to Kelly Holcomb yesterday, who was up in Canton, up in Canton, Ohio, for the pro football festivities over the weekend. Also someone who was in attendance that was shown on television, Philip Fulmer, former head coach, former AD at UT. He joins us to kick off the second hour of Darren, Daunic, and Chase. That's next. Second hour here on this Wednesday. Hope everybody's having a good day thus far. Darren McFarland and Chase McCabe alongside. Willie D is on vacation. He'll join us on Monday. We told you we're going to talk to former head coach, former AD, UT. He was in the house in Canton, Ohio. We talked to Kelly Holcomb yesterday to get his vibe on the experience. He was there as well, and he told some great stories from over the weekend. Sunday night, man, the stands were packed for the festivities. Of course, Peyton Manning was a big part of that, and this man was in the house, Philip Fulmer, and he is on the line with us. Coach, how you doing?
I am well. Hope you guys are.
Oh, it's hot, but I guess that's what we expect in these parts in August, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I had a chance to see Kelly a little bit this weekend. It was great to see him, and he looks great and is doing good, and there was quite a scene there in Canton.
Yeah, so tell us your side of it. Kelly really broke down a lot of the stuff. He was able to go to some of the, the after party stuff, the festivities, and run into a lot of people, and he just told some great stories and just what it was like. We watched it. I mean, it looked great, Philip, on television, but you were there. What was it like?
Well, it just was great. Seeing all those, in my case, a lot of people that I really looked up to as a youngster. Even back to playing days. You know, Roger Staubach, having a chance to catch up with him, and those kind of guys. And they're all down to earth and took time with people to do the autograph thing and all those kind of things. And then Kelly's right about the after parties. Those are functions you don't just see every day. The one that Peyton did was just at a beautiful place. It almost looked like you were walking into a small Italian town, somewhere. It was had the vineyards and just everything. It was incredible. So a lot of people there saw Jason Witten. Had a chance to spend some time with him. He came up, and Andy McCullough, who played on our teams, and and several other balls and people around the volunteers. So it was good to be there.
Yeah, it sounded like the who's who party.
Peyton kind of stole the show, with his humor and his speech. I just thought that was incredibly good.
Yeah, and let's go there, because I'm sure it didn't surprise you. You've been around him for a long time, and you always hear everybody talks about how prepared he is. Now, Kelly was in Indianapolis as a quarterback when Peyton was drafted, and so he got to see Peyton at the beginning stages of his career. You got to see Peyton even before that, so the true beginning stages of Peyton. So when did you know, and you obviously went through the whole recruiting process, so you had an inkling that something special was there, but when did you truly know, Phil, that there was something really special with this kid at the time?
Well, honestly, when he got to campus, he came to Tennessee because he didn't have to play as a freshman. We had a senior quarterback, and that just showed a tremendous amount of maturity in that, and just that. And he was competing for the second team job with Todd Helton, and Todd had been around a while, but was obviously going to be a baseball player. And then as life can happen, things change. And the seventh play of the UCLA game, Jerry Colquitt, our quarterback, goes down, and Todd goes in and does a really good job of bringing us back. We didn't win the game, but we were respectable and look forward to the next week. We beat Georgia with Todd, and then darn if Todd didn't go down. And the young ones are getting a lot more work than they had been probably, but you saw very early that Peyton had the work ethic that you thought about, had a great understanding of the mental game, even as a youngster coming, right out of high school, obviously with his dad and everything. And when Todd got nicked, thank goodness it wasn't bad, but when Todd got nicked against Mississippi State in a really tough loss, Peyton came in and just did a fantastic job. And you asked for the moment. We threw an out route from one sideline, and he chose to throw it across the field. And it's not always what you want a young one doing, but he hit Kendrick Jones in stride on the out, and Kendrick turned it up and separated from the defensive back, made a great play out of it, long run. But that was an absolute frozen rope over there. So now you combine the work ethic, the size, his vision, and now he's shown you the arm. It was just a matter of time, and we gave him most all the first team work from that point on, and he just got better and better. He went faster, much faster than we actually thought he would. We ended up winning 8 games with a freshman quarterback, and after a tough 1-3 start. So
was he always
my favorite team actually?
Yo, okay. Was he always a football nerd? Was he always a guy that was constantly studying and always trying to be perfect at everything? Was he always like that?
I don't know. I think he's a sports nerd. I mean, he can tell you, football is his favorite sport, but he can tell you, who was on the 39 Yankees team, baseball. I mean, he's a sports nut and loves it, and he's smart, retains things, exceptionally well. And, another thing that probably helped us with, him coming to Tennessee is we were in a system that was proven we could throw the football with Heath Shule. Heath had decided to go out early, but he had a chance to watch he throw the ball, and that helped, and great relationship with Coach Cutcliffe, who was there with us, Sunday as well, so as he should have been. So yeah, so there's just a lot of factors there, but Peyton's one of a kind. Maybe comes along in a generation kind of guy.
How did you choose how to handle as the head coach? You've got a young man who's garnering a lot of attention. I mean, you guys. I mean, you know this. There was a bullseye. Everybody knew Peyton, and there was a lot of talk. You guys were a good team, and it was a big deal when you guys were going on the road. And so, how did you handle that as all that continued? And I know you weren't just a one-man team. You guys were really talented, but Peyton, because of the position that he played, certainly garnered a lot of attention, as you know. So how did you choose to handle that and kind of corral that to make sure it wasn't a distraction to him at that age, at that time?
Well, his freshman year, we did it by the plays that we called. We just didn't put him in under stress to have to make a whole bunch of decisions. But truthfully, he took over, and I think it was in the fourth game, and by the seventh and eighth game, we were doing pretty much things in our package that we had done, with everybody as upperclassmen. He was just so good at understanding what we were doing and how we did it, and it was easy. Now, had good players around him, and he'd be the first one to tell you that, gave him the time and protected him. We had a really good run game that let the play action pass be, a big part of what we were doing, and he could throw it down the field when he needed to, and we'd keep the backs in and they could protect. So it was everybody working together to make it happen. But you're not going to lose many games if you can run the ball and stop the run and throw it like he was able to throw it. And at the beginning of his sophomore year, I mean, it was all in. We I think just had Pat Dye call me. He was had been the head coach at Auburn, and then I guess was out of coaching. But we had this little fraternity. He was a guard, and I was a guard, and there was other guys around, Dooley and other people that played in the offensive line. And he said, "You have lost your offensive line card. You're throwing the ball all the time." I said, "Hey, Coach, I've got Peyton Manning. I'm going to throw the football around." So it was, and Peyton was just easy. It was easy to coach. He comprehended the system. He understood blitzes and zone blitzes and coverages, and he saw most things before it happened. It was wonderful. We had a game against Georgia that we were winning pretty handedly, and I was going to take Peyton out at the beginning of the fourth quarter or somewhat late in the third quarter. And he came over to me, hey, Coach, we hadn't really played great this year on offense, and we got it going. Let's have another series. And I said, all right, Peyton, we'll do it, but we're not going to throw the football. I mean, the game was out of reach, and we're not going to throw the ball. Okay, good. So we go in and we run it a couple of times, and sure enough, Georgia brings a corner blitz, and his answer is to throw the blitz read. Well, he does what he's supposed to do, throws it out there. Peerless makes the corner miss, and zip, and there next thing, we got another score. Yeah, he looked at me as he came off and went as far to the other end as he possibly could. But he didn't do anything wrong. It wasn't, we just were not trying to run up the score big. But anyway,
that's a great story. We're talking with Philip Fulmer, and I've said this, and I don't know. I said the next time we talk to you, I was going to bring this up. So just because I thought it was odd when I saw it firsthand, I was covering one of the Super Bowls, and Donovan McNabb was there, and he sat down. He was nice enough to come over and sit down at the table with me, and we kind of went down memory lane, and I brought up, and I've always kind of filed this away, like the next time I talk to you, I'm going to bring this story up just to get your version. But I brought up this is post-Peyton. This is the very next year. This is probably the first game after Peyton Manning. So this is T. Martin, the 99 season,
98.
right? 98 season. And 98 season, duh. And it's against Syracuse, and Donovan is the quarterback. And, Coach, when I brought that game up, I mean, it was like I had just brought it up after that game had just concluded. All this time later, he talked about how angry that game still makes him because he felt like they should have won that game.
Well, they had a great team, several first-rounders, including him. I went to New York to one of the functions that they hand out all the awards, and Donovan was winning the quarterback of the year or whatever it was, and we sat next to each other. So we had a lot of time to talk about that game, and they were a great team, and then we turned out to be a really great team. We couldn't tackle Donovan the whole game, but we made enough plays. T throwing the ball and running the ball, and Jamal had his, coming out and for the season, and defense played just super, especially down the stretch. And it's funny you ask about it because Jeff Hall and I had breakfast this morning. He's from Winchester. I'm from Winchester, and we had that little moment. We were able to reminisce this morning about he came to the sidelines, and because I grew up with his mom and dad. We were great friends and everything. And he came to me and looked at me, and I said, "Jeff, go make Winchester proud." And he turns around and goes, wins the game, leads to a national championship. So, Donovan has good reason to be mad because we were fortunate to get that one, and it was two good teams playing each other though.
We're talking to Coach.
They had the Carrier Dome, and the dang Carrier Dome is an air conditioning company, Carrier, isn't it?
Yes, and it was hot.
It wasn't air conditioned. We had more guys cramping than we did when we went to Florida. It's crazy.
We're talking to Coach Philip Fulmer here on Darren, Daunic, and Chase. We heard Peyton's Hall of Fame speech, and we know he has a way with words, but I can remember another speech he gave back in 1997 when he announced he was returning to the University of Tennessee for his senior season. What was the conversation like between you two when he told you that he could have been the first overall pick that year and he decided to come back and finish what he started? What was that moment like between the two of you?
Well, the moment we celebrated. I mean, I was thrilled, and he loved college football. He loved his teammates. He loved the University of Tennessee. He had a chance to still be a kid. His dad and his mom and family, they all supported that and wanted him to enjoy his experiences in college. So, I'm glad he did it. I think it was the right thing for him then, and certainly it proved to be the right thing, through the years. He would tell you that the rookie year with the Indianapolis Colts wasn't his most fun years. He 3-13, I think, is what he was, and led the world in interceptions. And the next year he was 13-3 and took him to the playoffs. So I think that year benefited him greatly to enjoy his college year again. It's a shame, because honestly, if there'd been a playoff then that there is now, and even better if it was, like it's going to be, maybe if there's 12 teams, but if there'd been a 14 playoff, there's no question in my mind the 95 and 97 years, at least those two we would have been, playing in the playoffs. And the odd thing about it is we'd probably been playing Florida. We had two great teams in the same conference, in the same division, that were playing national level football. So, interesting time.
So in 98, with T. Martin, we all know you guys won the national championship, but the man on the other side of the sideline from you, Bobby Bowden, passed away, and I can remember watching that game as a kid and you all winning. But what were some things you remember about going up against Coach Bowden? Well, people that know me know this, but a lot of people might not. But Tom Osborne and Coach Bowden, and to some degree Coach Paterno. And I know he didn't finish up as well, but
those are the three guys that I wanted to emulate as a coach, and from how they handled their kids and their players and their coaches, and they all had staffs that stayed with them a long time, and I had a chance to pick their brain at different times, at clinics and going to visit them and those kind of things. And Coach Osborne, particularly, I was at Wichita State for 5 years, and so and they just opened his doors to me, and that was wonderful. But Bobby was a gentleman. He's as good a man as he ever was. Anybody could thought about it as a coach. He cared about his players, cared about his coaches. He wore his faith on his sleeve, and that was wonderful to see. There was lots and lots of things going on in college football sometimes that you're not necessarily proud of, but anything that was around Bobby Bowden, you could be proud of. He was approachable, friendly, caring. He did it. He did it as a CEO. I don't think he tried to micromanage his coaches necessarily, but he was the one that closed the door on those guys when it needed to be in recruiting. It was tough to recruit against him, I can tell you. So, one of those guys that comes along and everybody loves him and going to miss him. And I was talking to Steve Spurrier just a few days ago and about something else, and we got talking about Bobby and his record and and the fact that he'd always play Miami and Florida. He didn't run from anybody. Didn't have to do that. I'm not sure if Florida wanted to either, but it was there. But just a great man. Great coach, obviously. And I don't know if anybody. I think I heard that he was like 12 straight years in the top four. Or maybe it's 10 years in the top four. That's really hard to do.
You've seen expansion as a coach in the SEC. You've seen it as an administrator, and some of these things that were changing in college football. You saw as the AD at Tennessee. Now with Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC, what are some of your thoughts on that as it continues to grow and the landscape continues to change?
Well, the landscape, you just said, the landscape is changing. Things are changing. I hear, everybody likes for it to stay the same, but it doesn't. And this is driven, by dollars and television dollars and opportunities. And, there may end up 40 schools, 50 schools that end up with their own league, and nobody wants to get left out. And Texas and Oklahoma coming to the conference. I think Oklahoma's won the conference out there in the Big 12 6 straight years, I think. I can promise you that won't happen in the Southeastern Conference. The schedule's just too tough. And you may be the best team, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win all your games, for sure. So I think it's great for the conference. I think it's great for both of those schools. But the Oklahoma and Texas people are going to have to temper what they're looking for and plan for the championship.
Coach, if you look up VFL in the dictionary, I think your face is probably next to it, has evolved for life. You played there, you coached there, you're the AD there. Through all the things that you accomplished at the University of Tennessee, if I ask you the question of what do you want your legacy to be, how do you answer that now?
Well, I think that we did it the right way. We didn't cheat, didn't do all that. We the young men that came through our program benefited as men, from our program, and I'm living that right now. I'm like tonight at 6:00. I'm meeting a group of guys when I was an assistant that I coached. We're just going to just have a catch up time. It's when I was coming through, you didn't get into coaching because of the money. I mean, you got into coaching because you love doing it, And I'm not saying all the young coaches are strictly looking at the money or the glamour and those kinds of things, but some do. And, you did it because you love kids and you love them. I loved being an offensive line coach, and when I was at Wichita, I was a linebacker coach. I wanted my group to be the best group on the field and the best group in the conference and have the best players, in the country. And so my time as the head coach was mostly really, really a good time for me and my family, and a lot of it was for the university as well. And that's the other thing. You have a love and a passion for a place, and our university is bricks and mortar. I said this before, bricks and mortar can't love you back always, right? It's made up of the people, and we're fortunate to have a lot of great people at the University of Tennessee.
Well, we do appreciate your time going down memory lane with us, Coach, as always. Yep. Thanks for doing this. Continue to have a great summer, and we'll talk to you down the road.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Good. Thanks for having me on.
That is Phil Fulmer, former UT head coach and AD, of course, recruited Peyton Manning and saw Peyton Manning, as you just heard, in his college years. A great story about against Georgia, saying, let's go one more series. Let's go one more series.
And the thing is, like he was nice enough to give us 20 minutes of his time. We could have gone 2 hours just on more with Bowden. He said he talked to Steve Spurrier. Steve Spurrier was on our morning show last week. I mean, think about the SEC media days that those two had the jabs at each other. And I think there's respect, obviously, but
it was a lot more fun back then.
Well, Steve Spurrier, the famous "you can't spell citrus without UT." I mean, that's a famous line. The mind games in which they played. The first time he saw Peyton stand at the line of scrimmage, read a defense. I mean, how many times have we talked about that? If Peyton Manning could dissect a defense just by looking at it at the line of scrimmage. I mean, they're just a lot of different things. But Philip Fulmer, I mean, I meant what I said. He really is. He is the definition of a VFL. Did the AD tenure go the way that he wanted or everybody else thought it could?
I would say probably not.
No, but I think that what he did as a
whole. They needed to – just remember, just keep this in context. They needed something to stabilize. It felt like the ship was going to sink, and I think he grabbed some buckets.
He did.
And put some water out of the boat and kept it afloat.
He did.
It didn't turn into a cruise ship after that, but it saved the boat from sinking. He came in a really, really, really bad and rough time, and I think he stabilized everything for a while. And Jeremy Pruitt is going to go down as just an awful hire. It just is.
Right.
But you have to remember what he took over, and that was a really, really rocky times. And
did you mean to do that, or?
And he helped him get through that.
Yes, he did, and that's kind of how you have to remember. That's why I think his coaching tenure, that is always going to be what people gravitate towards and what they should. He brought him a national championship, had a lot of tremendous years with Peyton and without Peyton there. So,
and as you mentioned, he truly bleeds orange and loves the university.
And I'm sure, the way that his coaching tenure ended and then the AD, I mean, I'm sure he'd love to go back and change things if he could, but he can't. And now we'll see what the next chapter holds. I mean, I didn't realize he's only 70. So I don't know. I'm sure you'll still see him around. Do coaches truly ever retire? Is that really a thing?
Probably not. By the way, I saw where he was also reelected to the Tennessee Sports Hall of Fame board. So congratulations to him on that as well. We'll come back. More of Darren, Daunic, and Chase. Tim Hasselback in the third hour, so our weekly chat with him. It'll be around 12:15. He's had to move things around with his TV schedule. We'll talk to Timmy at about 12:15. You listen to DDC here on ESPN 102.5 The Game.
Tom just said that you guys feel more comfortable with you in year 2. The fact that your role was actually clearly defined this offseason, do you think that has helped clearly define a lot of their roles?
Yes, absolutely. I do. I think it's helped. I think just with everybody, with the coaching staff, with the players, I think it's been good up to this point. They kind of understand where the buck stops, and it is what it is. So I'm excited for the opportunity. I really am. I'm excited the ways these guys are going about working right now and kind of what we're trying to get accomplished on defense.
Titans defensive coordinator Shane Bowen on his role being defined. Welcome back into Darren, Daunic, and Chase here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. We're streaming on the Game Nashville app. Now, that was from last week. Chase McCabe, Darren McFarland, Elijah Campbell here with you. That was from last week, but I wanted to bring this up because now that I've heard Shane Bowen speak 2 weeks in a row, he was on Robbie and Rex Road earlier this morning as well. I just feel that there is this different confidence or an actual confidence with him because I've been in this role before where it's like you're kind of doing a job, but you don't have the title to go with it, and so you don't really know. There's just that sense of self-doubt of, okay, well, if I say this, does it actually matter? Like, do they listen to me? Or is it I'm really just speaking? Do they think I'm speaking for somebody else? And I think it's something that was brought up with Mike Vrabel a lot last year of, okay, who's running the defense? Who is the defensive coordinator? Who has that title? And he would scoff that, the media were the only people that cared about the title. Well, you hear that from Shane Bowen. I don't think that's the case. I think it has made a lot of things easier and more defined. That word that, hey, he is the guy. He is the defensive coordinator. And the reason that I keep bringing this up and harping on this, I think it's going to make a difference. Now, do I believe that he's got better players that in some positions than he did last year? Yes, I do. And I believe that this defense can only get better. Barring just mass amounts of injuries, I think they only have one place to go, and that is up when it comes to performance because they just simply weren't good enough last year. And if you have just an average defense with the offense that this team's expected to have, I think that's going to be a good thing. But what if this defense is above average? What if Bud Dupree does work out like everybody thinks he will, and that in turn elevates Harold Landry? What if Jeffrey Simmons has an all-pro year and just goes beast mode in year 3? What if the secondary, you have Caleb Farley that is in discussions of defensive rookie of the year, and he's everything that you hope he can be? I mean, a ton of what-ifs there, but I think it certainly all ties together. But the fact that you have Shane Bowen that is now the bona fide defensive coordinator, he is the one making the decisions. Yes, Mike Vrabel is involved. He's the head coach. He should be involved. But at the same time, let the guy you pick to do the job. Have Jim Schwartz that you can lean on. Because, quite frankly, Jim Schwartz was a better defensive coordinator than Mike Vrabel. So I think being able to lean on him is even better. Of picking from that brain. He looks at things differently than Mike Vrabel. He's not in the inner circle. He wasn't a part of the tree, the coaching tree, like Vrabel. So I think that has a benefit too. I just feel like there's some really good things ahead for Bowen and this defense. We're going to find out if he's the right man for the job because last year was abysmal. There were a lot of different things.
Yeah. Well, I think the title, I'll go back to what you said earlier. I mean, the title's a lot bigger than just a word on a nameplate or a way to officially describe this guy because it, will give him a vote of confidence from Mike Vrabel himself. If Coach Vrabel wasn't comfortable even referring to him as the DC, it's got to make you feel a certain kind of way behind closed doors. Whether you admit it or not, it's certainly got to make you feel that way in the slightest if he's not willing to at least mention that kind of role that you're playing and that the job that you're already doing. And for two, just like that confidence alone has got to be really big, as well as the respect he will now demand in the room and on the practice field too. You know, you are the defensive coordinator. The players know that you have the title of defensive coordinator. That's got to go a long way in those rooms too, especially when you're in meetings and then you're giving instruction on the field as well. I think that's why he sounds more confident. I think he has every bit the right to do that too. And I also agree with your point later. If it's a situation where he can succeed as a first-year defensive coordinator, being asked to be a top 20 defense has to be a good place to start. A lot of other guys are to get in that position, and they have to have this pressure of being a top 10 defense because the offense is lagging behind. Like being the defensive coordinator right now for the 49ers is a lot different than it is for the Titans, because the 49ers offense, you don't know what you have. You're going to have to be able to carry that offense a little bit, whereas here, you just got to be good enough. And that takes a lot of pressure off, as well as this combination of him finally being, I guess, I'm not saying he wasn't respected before, but when you're the defensive coordinator, that's going to carry a lot more weight when you have that kind of title, especially when you're getting it from the head coach.
So they were 28th in total defense in 2020.
Not good.
No. Not that is the bottom of the league. That's what that is. It's not last, but it's the bottom.
You're pretty close to last, yeah.
Allowing 398.3 yards per game. Let's just say they improved by 10 spots and they're 18th. Don't you chalk that up as a success?
I mean, that could lead to being a 12 to 13 win football team this year.
Yeah, especially if the offense continues to do what they do. And you know, I've heard people throw out over-unders with yards per game on the offensive side, and are they going to be more or around what they were last year? And I could see it being a little bit less just because you're not putting as much pressure on the offense because you know the defense is actually able to make some stops and get off the field.
Or you hope you're not, you know. In some like metrics, you'd still like yards per play, stuff like that, where the raw number of plays where those don't have an impact on that final number, you'd still like to be top 5, 6. And I think they're going to be. But I think you're right on that point as well, that the defense having less pressure to – or the offense having less pressure to score every time they touch the ball and being shootouts, or being like the Texans game at home was the perfect example of that. And on the road, both Texans games. I mean, you'd like to be able to sit on a lead, not have to worry about your defense giving up chunk yards at a time, and then not having to put out your starters when you're up 21 in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. I just think having that, again, having everything defined is certainly going to help. Now, the players got to go out and do the job. You know, you've defined the role, you've picked the players, you're going to put the players in those positions and draw up these schemes. Now they got to actually do the job.
Organization's got to be the first part of that, right?
Yeah,
I mean, if you're going to have a plan, I guess the first part of concocting a plan is to organize who is taking care of certain parts of that plan. And obviously, you know, the execution's a lot different, but I mean, it'd be nice, and I'm sure Mike Vrabel likes this too, of not having to talk about who's in charge of this defense anymore whenever they do give up 35 points.
I'm sure we'll come up with something else that annoys him.
We will. You know, well, that's our job. It's in the job title.
That's
to annoy coaches.
But communication too. Shane Bowen has talked about that now you have, at least on paper, a clearer line of communication when it comes to, hey, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, this is who you go to. I think that certainly both on the field and off the field is going to make a big difference.
Oh, it's going to make a world of difference, especially when you have a bunch of new players coming in, too, that weren't around for last year. I'm not saying you're completely wiping the slate clean, because there's still some guys that were key contributors on the defense whenever you were playing really well, like Jeffrey Simmons, that were around for the last season where it wasn't as organized. But when you have the shakeup like you did in the defensive secondary, when you have some new pieces on the defensive line, that organization's going to maybe help that transition go a whole lot smoother.
I'm giddy about Jeffrey Simmons. I just have a feeling that this is going to be
the Jeremy Fowler story where he put on ESPN, where they're talking, where he did a survey, his GM and scout survey, where they were glowing about Jeffrey Simmons and like put him in the same sentence as Aaron Donald. It's got to be exciting, but like it's hard not to see that too with the way that he's kind of one of the ultimate run stoppers in football right now. It's hard not to get excited about that. There's not much to be excited about, a defense that was 28th last season, but I mean, he's certainly a good place to start.
I think another guy that people are going to be are already excited about is A.J. Brown. And I want us to talk about him on the other side because I'm going to present something and get your thoughts.
Ooh.
On one A.J.
Present
Brown.
it.
Mm-hmm. We'll do that on the other side as you listen to Darren, Daunic, and Chase. That's next. All right, let's see who's paying attention. Caller 8 right now, 615-737-1025. That's our phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Caller 8 to Elijah win a pair of tickets to see the band Camino at Ryman Auditorium. That'll be on August 31st. So the final day of this month at the Ryman, the band Camino. Be caller 8. Good luck. 615-737-1025. That is once again, our phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. All right, let's talk about A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown is really starting to morph into a really spectacular receiver, right? He's not there yet, but he continues to.
It's getting there.
His trajectory is going the right direction, right? It's going up. The graph looks good. If we had the chart, the graph chart, right? It's going in the right direction. Is he an elite receiver right now? No, he's not elite yet. Can he be? Hope so. Can he be that upper? Can he be a Julio Jones down the road? Hope so. So he continues to go, his play on the field continues to go the right direction. I think the other thing about it is he's getting more comfortable. He's comfortable with his surroundings. He's comfortable with who he is. And I think you're starting to see now more of his personality. We saw it in the offseason, right?
Yep.
He absolutely, and we all ate it up. Everybody loved it here. I mean, he campaigned for Julio Jones. I mean, I thought that was really cool. Mm-hmm. And he probably played some type of, I mean, it did factor in. I don't know if we had the pie, what were the percentages of that pie chart be of what he factored in, but that had to mean something. He's the number one receiver on this team, and he's actively out there on social media recruiting Julio Jones.
Yeah, who's a number one receiver.
So we were starting to already see him morph into the real A.J. Brown, right? He has personality, and I think it will only continue to grow. Now, this week, he called out a member of the media a couple of days ago on Twitter, and it's been kind of a mixed bag of how everybody feels about that, right? Mm-hmm. It seems to be kind of a house divided. You got the traditional, AJ, don't worry about that. Who cares what's being said? You can't worry about that and just ignore all that stuff. And, okay, so that's like one side. And then, there's another side that says, good for you, choice word, the media, forget them. Go after them. You go get them. Bro, you go do that. And so there's that. And then there's the other one of, if you don't like it, tough. That's part of it. Deal with it. So there's different angles everybody can take in all this. And I don't know which one has the majority.
Yeah.
But I think I'm going to take a little bit different take because I haven't told you where I'm going with this. While some people are being critical, especially the ones that do what we do, because it's like, hey, man, leave the media alone.
Right.
We're the media,
They have the right to their opinion.
Right to their opinion. You leave us alone. I will tell you, I say good for A.J. Brown because A.J. Brown is showing his true colors. He showed it over the offseason. Basically saying, I'm a team guy. Mm-hmm. I'm here for the team. I want to sacrifice my spot. This is going to probably hurt me to bring in Julio Jones, but I'm a team guy, and I want this guy. This guy makes our team better. So you were all for him being him in the offseason. So everybody was like, yeah, A.J. Brown, go get him, man. That's awesome. Go Titans. Tighten up. Whoa. Yeah. A.J. Brown, he's one of us. Yeah. But then on the other hand, when he is still being himself and he's defending his teammates, now you have a problem with it? Oh, so you're going to pick and choose when you have an issue with A.J. Brown being A.J. Brown. You're going to pick and choose when it's okay with you? I say this is who he is. This is the same guy in the offseason. Everybody was rooting him on. Man, A.J. Brown, good for him. Yeah. Yeah. Who was saying anything bad about what A.J. Brown was doing? No one.
Yeah.
No one. But now You're going to be like, hey, man, you just worry about playing football. Don't you worry about what the media is saying about you, man. Just ignore Twitter. You're better than that.
Well, it wasn't even about him. It was about somebody else.
Well, I know. It's about somebody in his receiver room.
Yeah.
Okay, Reynolds. Okay. But to me, you don't get to say that. It's the same social media outlet that was getting him actively recruiting Julio Jones that you were going, yeah, man. Yeah, A.J. Brown. Woo, yeah. Keep doing it, man.
Right.
Keep recruiting Julio on social media. So the way I look at it is I'm taking the different approach. He's defending his teammate. And I say good for him. And another part of this is the member of the media has a long history of this. A long, and I mean decades, history of doing this type of stuff, which has created, and you could say, well, no, wait a minute. Aaron, that wasn't that big of a deal. Okay, maybe it wasn't. But once again, it's the Rasheed Wallace effect. You don't get to say if you're Rasheed Wallace, they're targeting me. Yet, well, you think? Yeah, Rasheed, you've had 759 technicals. Yeah, you may be a target to the referees, okay? Because you have a history of going berserk on referees. So, yeah, this just in. Maybe not all of your technicals were warranted, but this just in, you are being targeted because you have a long history of doing this.
Reputation was earned.
So not all the technicals were the same. I get it. Some he deserved and maybe some he didn't. Okay? But when you have a history of this, a long history of this, you don't get the benefit of the doubt anymore. And so while that tweet may be harmless to a degree, I still think there was a little bit of a reason that A.J. Brown had the right to defend his teammate. I also say you don't get to he gets to defend that because there's a long history of that. So you don't get a break for that. You don't.
Right.
Because you have decades of it being a pattern. Okay? This is not the first player that's yelled at you. It's not the first run-in you've had with the player. It's not the first run-in you've had with the coach. It's not the first run-in you've had with a member of the media. Okay, you have a long history of this type of behavior. So you don't get the benefit of the doubt. And so I say, good for A.J. Brown. Because A.J. Brown is being A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown is doing exactly what he did in the offseason.
He's being a good teammate. That's how you see it.
You rooted for him to be a good teammate when he actively recruited Julio Jones to the nth degree. And he's yet again being a good teammate, and now you're going to pick and choose?
Right.
I'm not.
Yeah. So my whole thing on it and AJ's response was, I'm going to say this as nice as I can. Nobody asked for your bleeping opinion. He's probably working through something like everybody else is in camp. I'll probably get in trouble for this, but I don't even care. Need to learn some respect fast. That was the tweet that A.J. Brown has since deleted. But once you tweet it, it's there.
And I wish he wouldn't have. Because
Yeah.
I don't think he should have. Because he didn't do anything wrong, in my opinion.
My only the line that is tough to find nowadays. Let me say this. I have no problem him being a good teammate and defending his guy. I have no problem with that. And I hear everything you're saying about this particular member of the media, that whether there was a follow-up tweet with context or not, this is who he is. And I think that something when you make comments like that, it's on Twitter. There's no context. You don't get to we have all tweeted something that it's met one way and it's perceived another because there's no
X
context.
amount of people. Yeah.
Right. And so the
same with the text, right?
The same with the text. And so I can say the same for A.J. Brown. The thing that I wish we would get back to is, and I agree, I was one of those people with A.J. and his recruiting of Julio Jones. Like, I was all about it. I loved it, and I love the personality. I wish we could get back to more of, but he did a lot of that with video. So you got the true context. Like, I wish we could you could actually, I'd rather hear him. Like, I'd rather him get up at the podium and say, hey, I don't appreciate Paul Kuharsky calling out my guy like that. I would welcome that, and I'm sure the Titans will go, oh no, don't, but I would rather hear it out of his mouth, like say it, and I'm sure if he had the opportunity to do that, he probably would, but because I'm all about being a good teammate. There's just a fine line with Twitter, because anybody can, and I'm not calling AJ a keyboard warrior by any means, but there's that group that'll come after him and say that that's what he's doing. Anybody can say anything on Twitter. I want to continue to hear AJ be more vocal, actually be vocal and be that guy. And I think he will be. I think when he's given, it's hard right now because not everybody can roam the locker room and go and, get an interview like we've been able to do in the past. You still have Zoom, or they're bringing you up to a fence. So I get it. It's very controlled. But I think he's got an opportunity to have a big voice. And like he was doing this summer, we all laughed at the videos. I mean, we're running a promo right now that's from a video of his going, hey, come vibe with me. So that's where there's that fine line with Twitter of and I guess I am one of those people too that, like, there's some things that you got to let roll off and be a good teammate, but also don't let that stuff get to you, especially by somebody that has a history of doing this.
Same exact tweet. The exact same tweet is tweeted out. The exact same tweet is tweeted out by Kayla Anderson. Same response?
Probably not.
Probably not? Okay.
I don't know. I mean, because again,
Joe Rexroad.
How much
Joe Rexroad.
Okay, so how much context is Joe giving?
So I said the same exact tweet. Joe Rexroad.
I think he does respond the same.
I don't. And I'll just keep going down the list. I can keep giving you people in this market.
So if I tweet that.
Well, but I'm trying to get people that are out there more. We're not out there right now. So
But okay, to your point, I'm not out there.
And that's why I didn't bring your name up. And I didn't bring up Elijah.
But let's say I go tonight, because I could go tonight because it's not during our show.
I mean, if we were out there at training camp and A.J. Brown had already been to our table and sat down and we'd already had a good time with A.J. Brown, I would have used you as an example, but we're not out there.
But why I'm bringing me up, because they're practice during the show, we can't be out there. But if I go out there tonight at a time that I can be, and I tweet that,
no,
he doesn't know me.
Nope.
See, I disagree. No, I think he would, because I think it would be a, hey,
nope.
What are you doing? Nope. What do you know? You're not here.
Nope. Not happening. You're missing the boat. It's all on where it came from. The creator of the text. That is what you're missing in this whole It is strictly about where it came from.
Yeah.
It's not where or who. That's the reason you got that reaction. I don't believe for a minute if Kayla Anderson tweeted out from News 2 that same exact tweet, he does that. I don't believe for a minute he has that same reaction. It's all on the creator. It's all on where it came from.
Reputation.
And that's called reputation. That's called decades of this. Decades of run-ins with players. Decades. Coaches, members of the media. It's all about where it came from. It's not about context. Understand that. Everybody needs to understand that. So when you say, AJ, man, you got to leave it alone. Don't worry about it. You're a professional football player who's a receiver, man. Don't worry about what they're saying on Twitter. It's about where it came from.
Do you think Vrabel's saying that to him? Do you think the head coach is saying that?
Saying what?
Saying, hey, you got to, you got to let that stuff go, man. You don't need to say that.
I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know. I don't know how Mike Vrabel handles that stuff.
Because I think a head coach.
Is it the head coach or does the receivers coach? I don't know.
Well, but
I don't even know if it's addressed. I don't know. I don't know how they feel about letting their players be them. Like, think about it. If you're on their side of things, Okay, one, do you think Mike Vrabel has any love lost for the creator?
Probably not.
Probably not. Really?
Doesn't seem that way.
Probably not. Do you listen to the press conferences?
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, you do, because we play them all the time. I think we know the answer to that. So he's defending a teammate. The head coach already has certain feelings about this individual to begin with. And his player's defending another player on the team, and you're going to have a talk with him? I don't see it.
Well,
I don't see where he has a talk with him.
but I'm looking at, you got to look at this. He's the head coach, but he's a former player and a
You going to slap his hand for that?
outspoken player. I don't think he's going to
Don't stop taking up for your team.
I don't think he's going to slap his hand, but I do wonder if he's going to be like, "Hey, I appreciate where you're coming from on that. Let me handle that. Let me handle him." Now that's a head coach. That's the head coach saying, "Hey."
I think you already heard it in the head coach's voice with Joe's question about the depth chart, and somebody chimed in, and the head coach said, "Hey, that's not your question.
Right.
I don't need to hear from you."
Right.
Okay?
And he did do that.
Okay. So there's your answer.
Okay.
I think it's all about, to me, I say good for A.J. Brown. I don't see where he did anything wrong. I think he's being him and he's defending a teammate. He's being a good teammate. Now, if he's getting into not just total nonsense, like we all know the nonsense Twitter battles that have been out there where you're like, dude, what are you doing?
Those
Late hours, a little after dark Twitter battles. So maybe that factored in a little bit. Maybe the judgment wasn't great. Maybe a little skewed, a little blurry. Just saying. But those were times. Like there were times I'm like, Kenny, man, what are you doing, man? Stop that. Like you don't need to be having those battles. Like that's not about defending a teammate. Like you're just having stupid battles on Twitter with people. Like you could say anything and he would come at you. And it's like, come on, man. Like those are different.
Do you think there's something missing though? Because you were around 15 years ago. You were at practice and in the locker room. You know, it was before Twitter was prominent.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there is, because I know that you've seen, you know, a player that doesn't like what somebody's written or said, and they go up and there's a true face-to-face confrontation.
Well, the good player, a leader in a room, that's how he handles it.
And I'm
the ones who aren't leaders, they just ignore you, or they won't say anything to you, and they just ignore you, which tells me, like, if you have a problem, well, then why would you address it with the media person? Like, why wouldn't you just straight up? And the good ones do. The good ones pull you aside and be like, "Hey, man, that's BS. What are you doing? Why would you write that, or why would you say that?"
D Mace has told stories of whether it was Baltimore or here that he's done that.
Yeah, you should.
Right.
The good ones do. The ones who aren't good leaders, they ignore you.
Sure, and
they just turn away from you.
And that's where, and again, if the locker room was open, like it usually is, then maybe then AJ might have gone up to him and said, "Hey, what are you doing? Like that's not cool. You don't know what's going on." And that's what I hope would happen, and I feel like it would happen. That's just where I think the line gets blurred with Twitter, because there are Twitter battles all the time. But that's also the age in which we live.
Let me tell you, those conversations have gone on many times over the years and it hasn't changed.
Oh, I've witnessed
that person. So, so you if he wants to do that, he can waste his time and do it. But those exchanges have happened. I've lost track over the years, and it's not changing. The creator. So I mean, A.J. Brown can do that. It's not going to change anything. Just FYI.
Oxygen to a flame.
Exactly. All right, we'll come back. Hour number 3 next. 94.9 is the official English radio home of the Nashville Soccer Club. They're off until Sunday. Nashville SC takes on DC United at Nissan Stadium, so they'll be hosting that game. Pregame starts at 5:45. The match begins at 6 o'clock p.m. on Sunday evening, so keep that in mind. Congratulations to Megan Angeloffs. Megan was doing the right thing. She was listening, just paying attention, listening and enjoying the show. Not prompted. Didn't say, hey, be listening at 11:45. We'll give you a chance to win tickets, or 11:30, whenever we did it. Hey. Didn't prompt it. Just listening, and was lucky caller 8. So good job. Megan, you're going to go to that Camino concert at Ryman Auditorium on August 31st. So good job by you. Have fun. All right, we'll have Tim Hasselback coming up here in just a moment. As training camps all around the league are underway, we know that. Preseason games, we had the Hall of Fame game, Cowboys and Steelers, and so there's a couple of preseason games, I think, tomorrow night, right?
Thursday?
Yeah, tomorrow
that sounds
night.
right.
The Indianapolis Colts putting out there that Carson Wentz and Quentin Nelson are trending, take this however you want, are trending towards playing week 1.
Well, again, I go back to what Dan Dockich told us last week. When they tell you week to week, it means month to month. When they tell you month to month, it means they're out for the year. So, I don't know about that. Show me what they look like week 1. If they're out there week 1, then I'll believe you. If not, then
to their credit right now, week 1 is still a little bit of ways.
Yeah,
if it was next week or something, we'd be like, come on, man.
Do you like how they set this up? Because, they – one less preseason game, but they didn't change the preseason schedule. The preseason schedule started when it usually does. There's just now a 2-week gap in between the end of the preseason and the start of the regular season. I kind of like that because it does give you a little more time to, even though you got to cut your roster down, but like these guys that have been sitting out for the Titans, it gives you a little more time to ease them back in where it's not just the week in between.
Yeah. No, I like it.
I think that works.
I like a couple things. News and notes with the Seattle Seahawks. It looks like they are releasing Aldon Smith.
Yeah, I literally just saw that.
And Jamal Adams, they have extended an offer to him. There's an offer on the table. Literally, I guess it's just sitting there on the table. And it's up to him to go in there and sign it or read it or do whatever you do with the offer laying on the table. Or is that just a figure of speech?
Do they slide it over like here?
Do you think it's literally or figuratively?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I mean, it's sitting on something. Or maybe it's sitting on a computer.
Could be.
Could just be, sitting in an inbox.
Could be. You think so? Offer on the table could be inbox in 2021?
Check your email. Check your Dropbox. Check your whatever the teams
Did they
use.
Zoom? Did they Zoom him?
I hope
Zoom
not.
his agent? Hey, man.
I know we're still using Zoom, but maybe they did. I don't know. DM.
Hey, we DM'd you?
Yeah, it's on Twitter. It's a DM. Twitter DM. So
That'd be weird to get an offer through a DM.
But very
like a contract
very on brand for 2021.
I know people get offers on DMs. I'm saying a contract offer.
Yeah, well, there's some kind of offers that we can't talk about here.
Once again, usually late night DMs.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's go to Tim
Hi, Tim.
Hasselback. Tim, what's going on?
What's up, boys? How you guys?
Good. Staying cool.
Why is it hot out?
There's your answer. Yeah.
Is it? Huh?
Yeah. Don't go outside. It's hot.
No, in all seriousness, we had a little youth football scrimmage that got canceled yesterday because of the heat.
Yeah.
Which I have to say, I'd never experienced that growing up. I think scheduling something in the middle of the day, meaning after 10 a.m. or before 6 p.m. was our mistake.
Well, and look, I'm going to ask you this and not to get you in trouble or start anything. I do wonder because we ended up having our baseball practice last night and we made it through 2+ hours and it was hot as Hades and I had to literally peel layer by layer, the clothes off. I mean, just they were disgusting, soaked, drenched, like we had been running through sprinklers. But I do wonder, to your point, and by the way, I had heard of other things getting canceled, outdoor scrimmages and practices getting canceled. So you were not the only one because of the heat. And it's not, has it? I remember as a kid, we had hot days, really, really hot days. So I don't think, unless I'm wrong, that the temperatures have soared, 12 degrees hotter than when we were kids. I believe we had really, 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 really hot August days. So do we make too much of that today? Are we just a little bit smarter about it and we were dumb back then? Like, how do you think?
Yeah.
What's the right answer?
Smart about it. I think we're smart about it, and we were dumb back then. Like, as frustrating as it is, I'm sure, I said it half kidding about, like, things getting canceled because it's hot out. You're like, oh, man, we missed stuff because it rains. Like, it's a gorgeous day out. Is it hot? Sure. But it's a shame that we're not playing or the kids don't get a chance to play. I would say this. I think that this would be the best way I could kind of describe why it's important. And obviously there's been, tragic situations that have happened, especially playing football. I know you were playing baseball, but playing football. We did, I've done some stuff with some, Elizabeth and I have done a fair amount of things in the military community. And this summer was with, a medic, and he works with special force teams and stuff. And they were doing a training thing with some kids and, they're putting them in cold tubs. Just kind of a mental toughness exercise and things of that nature. Well, he basically said to me, he's like, look, there are very few instances where, people kind of get in trouble physically because they're cold, and, you're wet and cold, it's uncomfortable and it's challenging and it can be tough. But where you really get into danger is when somebody overheats. And, I do think that if, whether it's a high school practice, a college practice, a pro practice, or youth football, playing, and practicing in the heat when kids have maybe been playing, throughout the day, it's the right thing to do to be smart about, handling the conditions. And if that means practice in the morning or practice late at night, that's probably the best move.
I'm really intrigued on how the Los Angeles Rams, how they're going to be this year. I know there's hype around them. They made the big trade. They said, Jared Goff, you limited us, so we feel like we're better. Their narrative is we're way better with Matthew Stafford. Ultimately, though, how do you think this plays out? Because Matthew Stafford has had no success whatsoever in a dozen years in the NFL in the month of January. I think he's going to get that opportunity again to try to rewrite that narrative, but do you think he ultimately does rewrite the narrative?
I do. I think that he will. Here's the situation. Matthew Stafford started 168 games for the Lions, okay? How many times do you think he had a 100-yard rusher in the 160?
Oh, it's very low. Very, very low.
How many do you think?
168, I'm going to say
168.
28 times. And that's 11. Probably way high.
11 times in 168 games. He's coming from a bad situation. And so I'm trusting, my eyes on this in terms of what I've seen him do. And he is so physically talented, even at this point of his career. He's played a lot of football. He's tough. He's competitive. He's smart. And I think he's going to a really good team. Now, it's a huge loss with Cam Akers tearing his Achilles. I think he's going to be a great back. I think that, the offensive line is a little bit older. But generally speaking, I think that's a better team. I do think Jared Goff was handcuffing Sean McVay a little bit, and Stafford won't do that. So I've picked them to win the division. That's how significant I think the Stafford signing is.
Okay. I'm big on body language. I watch body language. I watch how people act, react, just how they carry themselves. I've been watching a lot of Steelers at training camp. Ben Roethlisberger. His body language, I'm still trying to figure out. Is it he has all of a sudden found the fountain of youth because looks like he's exercising and he actually cares about the way he looks. And he's been maybe working out this offseason. Was it Tom Brady's success? Like, hey, maybe I'm not done. Maybe I can take this thing for a while. Or is his body language saying I'm loosey-goosey, I'm having fun? I mean, he just looks like a different guy. Is it I'm loosey-goosey, I'm having fun, I'm sitting around talking with everybody, seems like I'm participating in a different way, he's not off to himself. It's because he knows it's truly his last year. This is it. Which one of those categories best fits?
I think that he wants to have a good year. I think he's heard a lot of criticism. I think he's, a little, another year, call it, removed from, a very significant elbow injury. And so, I think there's an element of, kind of rededicating yourself somewhat. There's been a lot of changes in his life in general over the last, call it 5 years. And so I do think that, and to your point about Brady, there is no doubt that Brady's process of eating, pliability, all the different stuff has gotten everyone's attention that plays the position. Now, whether or not they're going to do exactly what he does, I don't think everyone's going to follow that, but it's gotten everyone's attention for sure. And look, I know that people are maybe altering things because they see that it can be better than, just the struggle of getting older and losing that battle.
When you look at this Titans team right now, there's a lot of hype. People feel really good about this team. Ultimately, how do you think this is going to play out, not dealing with things you can't control, like injuries and COVID or whatever? If everybody's playing, how do you think this season plays out?
I think they're really good. I think I've said to you guys before, I've picked the Colts to win the division. Just because I think they're like both sides of the ball. They've got a good runner. I think it's a really good football team. That being said, like you mentioned, hey, no injuries and they're healthy and they're going the Titans can win the division. And they could win it easily. I think they can be that good. To me, it comes down to the defense. We've talked about it before. I mean, last year's defensive struggles were almost bizarre, just because you'd think, at some point you're going to fix them a little bit like the Vikings. I just came off of SportsCenter talking about the Vikings. They were horrendous on defense, and you think Mike Zimmer and his history, why are they so bad on D? And I don't think they will be that bad on D because of Mike Zimmer and his history in the league. And that's why I think in some ways for the Titans, you look at it and you go, well, Mike Vrabel and his history on defense and his knowledge on defense and then changing players and getting it right, you know what? They're going to be better on D, which makes them a legitimate contender.
We're talking to Tim Hasselback, ESPN NFL analyst. He joins us every Wednesday around noon. Tim, what quarterback battle that's going on in a training camp right now intrigues you the most?
I'm really curious about the Chicago situation. It was early on. It was QB1, here we go. And that's great. And Andy Dalton, I think, I probably like Andy Dalton more than most. But Justin Fields is a different caliber athlete, player, all of that stuff, I believe. I think he's talented enough to be a league MVP one day. And so we're going to see him play in these preseason games. And I think people are going to be like, wait a minute. Why is that guy, why is number one going to sit on the bench for the first half of the season? Especially when we're not projected to be very good and probably aren't going to be very good. So I'm really interested to see how that's going to play out in Chicago.
What about New Orleans? Is it Jameis?
I think it is. I came off SportsCenter talking about this. Jameis Winston is 27 years old. He's got 70 starts. He's thrown over 120 touchdowns. Taysom Hill is about to turn 31. Taysom Hill's got 94 completions. Jameis has nearly as many touchdowns as Taysom has attempts, and he's basically 4 years younger than him.
Like, I think the way to do it in New Orleans is start Jameis and use Taysom in the role that he's been used, because that's going to make you a little bit harder to defend, and I think it'll help Jameis play a little better.
And then in Denver, is it my guy?
Brandon Stokely joined us yesterday, Tim, and said Bridgewater's going to win it. Do you agree?
Well, listen, Stoke would know what's going on there, I think. And I think that Teddy's just kind of as a pro, and guys not making mistakes and things like that. I would guess that that's what Vic Fangio will be drawn to. So that wouldn't surprise me. But, let's be honest, if they had another option, a little bit, you know what this reminds me of? Chase's fantasy team. If there was another option, they would take it.
Yeah, that is very accurate. Okay, and then finally, a guy that is going to start week 1, and we don't really think there's a battle, but could be in the biggest danger of losing their job at some point in the season.
Cam Newton.
That was very quick.
And I don't know for sure he's going to start week 1, but if he doesn't pass the ball better, it makes no sense to sit Mac Jones. I'll give you another one, too. I know all this talk about Jimmy Garoppolo and this and that. Trey Lance, if he is not starting in September, it will be 20 months, and he will have started one game in 20 months. And then you go back to his previous season, a low level of college football where he was a one-year starter. You don't get better by watching for that long. At some point, you have to play to get better. So, I don't think there's an option to sit Lance.
Tim, we know you got to go. We'll be watching on television. Keep up the good work. We'll talk to you next week.
Cool. See you, fellas.
All right, Tim Hasselback, ESPN. Their expert talking all things NFL, does the same thing with us every Wednesday on the program. Come back, more Darren, Daunic, and Chase next.